Tēnā koutou katoa. Lovely to see you all here today, and I feel very privileged to be at your conference and speaking today about positivity and the benefits of positive framing. So in this session, we'll talk about the benefit of positive emotions, how to frame things positively, and how to become a realistic optimist, and why these things are important and why they're hard to do. There's additional information in the booklet and also some resources that you can look at later too, so that you can come back to. But I'd like to start with an old Native American legend. A wise old Cherokee woman was sitting around the fire talking with her granddaughter. The granddaughter was asking her about how she got to be where she was. She's a successful woman, wise, well valued in the community. A lot of people looked up to her. And the granddaughter was asking her questions. And the grandmother said to the girl, "A fight is going on inside me. It's a terrible fight between two wolves. One wolf is bad and ugly. It's resentment, anger, fear, negativity, greed, arrogance, guilt. It spreads lies, self-doubt, and fear. The other wolf is good and beautiful. It brings gratitude, compassion. It's friendly, joyful, and it spreads peace and happiness." The granddaughter paused in deep reflection about what her grandmother had said. And then her grandmother said, "The same fight is going on inside you and inside all of humans." The granddaughter thought about this as well. And then she asked, "Grandma, which one will win?" So, positivity. You've probably all heard about the benefits of positivity. Positive emotions make us more resilient to adversity and better able to achieve things. You're actually more open to opportunities and more realistic when you're feeling positive. Our minds open up with the power of positivity and close without it. Our peripheral vision actually expands when we're feeling more positive, and it contracts when we're feeling negative. So when we're feeling positive, we're able to take in more of the context, more of the setting. We can see more possibilities. We also remember details better. Positive emotions play a significant part in improving our health and well-being. Also, our relationships. We're more likely to see connections between people when we're experiencing positive emotions. And they just feel good, don't they? We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world. Today, positive psychologists would say, with our thoughts, we frame our experience. It colours our reality. The frames we use to view and process our experiences make a significant difference to professional outcomes. People who find it easier to put a positive frame on things tend to be more optimistic, and this trait correlates strongly with success. A McKinsey study on women in leadership found actually extreme optimism correlated with the success of women leaders. Contrary to what you've got into your program, I'm talking today about positive framing. And there's a difference between positive thinking and positive framing. So it's actually not healthy or helpful to be positive all the time, and that's not what I'm talking about here. All our emotions have a place. We face problems, challenges, setbacks in our personal and professional lives all the time, and those emotions are real. And, we don't want to put our head in the sand and forget, bury them. I'm not talking about eliminating negativity today, more how you can hold the bad with the good and keep them in proportion. So positive thinking attempts to replace adversity with positive beliefs. So it's the don't worry, be happy now. Every day in every way, life's getting better and better. And those kind of positive affirmations and thinking, they have a place. But positive framing actually accepts the facts of adversity, accepts the reality, and counters them with action. It's about being open to the possibility of success, of things working out. So it requires us to be self-aware, and for some of us, reality actually might be better than we actually see it. Our unconscious emotional responses might come from self-criticism or self-doubt, low self-esteem, which colours our perception. And that's not usually helpful. So awareness of our triggers and vulnerabilities can help us to reframe a situation. It's about realistic optimism, which I'll talk about shortly. And as I said, that's about being open to the possibility that things might work out. And because you're open to the possibility, you take action, your attitude changes and you take action accordingly rather than feeling stuck. And it calls upon effort and action. Okay, you're probably all familiar with that, the glass half full, the glass half empty. Whichever way you see it, it's correct. How about a statement like this? Which would you rather hear? You have a 10% chance of mortality or a 90% chance of survival? So if you're in a specialist office and you were told that, which way round would lead to more empowering actions? Our frame on a situation changes our attitude, which changes our actions. And this has been seen in health studies many a time. How about a situation like this? There we go. How about this situation? Your boss calls you into her office. There's a meeting going on with 2 senior staff members and a client. You walk in, nobody asks you to sit down, nobody looks up. It's the atmosphere, the energy in the room's really, really stilted. The others, the two senior staff members and the client get up, shuffle up their papers, walk out of the room. So, if that was you, what would you be thinking? Hands up if you'd be thinking, what have I done wrong? I'm in trouble. Yeah? Some of you. Hands up if you're thinking, wow, something complex is going on here. I wonder how I can help. I'm looking forward to finding out. Or something in that vein. Anyone? Some of you. Great. So, again, we don't know which is going to be true, do we? And it could be a number of different stories. So shifting our frame of reference can change the way we feel about it. If we tend to see the worst, reframing can help balance our negative thoughts and get the most out of a situation. So try asking yourself, how else could I choose to interpret this situation? Our brains are like Velcro for the bad and Teflon for the good. So if you're like many of us, You'll remember a toxic conversation you had with someone 2 months ago much better than you'll remember a really stimulating, vibrant, joyful conversation you had with friends just over the weekend. Yeah? It's because that negative sticks to us. And that's because we have a Stone Age brain still. To keep our ancestors alive, Mother Nature evolved a brain that routinely tricked them into thinking, not making 3 mistakes: overestimating threats, underestimating opportunities, and underestimating resources. This kept our ancestors alive because they were on that lookout for the next threat that had far more survival instinct than what opportunities might come your way. Yet today we don't live in that same world of constant threats. But we still live, many of us, with a trickle of anxiety and fear due to the way our brain is wired. We're still more alert to threats, problems, negative emotions due to our evolution. They affect us more often and more quickly, and we remember them more intently. That's the Velcro and the Teflon. And the nature of your work and training as women-in-law mean that you're trained to look for risks, look for problems. So you can be more vulnerable to the impact of the negativity bias and the effects of that, such as anxiety and depression and some of those other things that go with that. But there's good news. The good news is we now know how to rewire our brain. Neuroplasticity, I'll get there, is the ability of the brain to reorganise itself and create new circuits in response to our environment and thinking. And throughout the remainder of the session, we'll look at ways to do that. Does that sound like a good idea? Yep. Okay, we'll start with looking at how to manage setbacks. And I'd like you, we're just going to go through a little exercise here, and I'd like you to think of a setback at work. Preferably something fairly recent. Could be something like criticised by somebody, client, lost an important case, something that you felt at the time was upsetting. And I'll just give you a moment to identify something like that. Let me know if you've all got one. Anyone can't find a setback? All got one? In your booklet on page 15, you can use that to mark this off, or you can just follow along with the overheads. So what I'd like you to do as you think about that setback, firstly, on that scale of 1 to 10, how did you feel at the time about it? With 1 being you saw the setback as very temporary in nature, it was over and done with quickly. So it happened, you moved on. And 10 being you saw it as quite permanent. For example, maybe relationships you felt were severely damaged to the point that they'll never be repaired. So if you could just have a think of the situation you're thinking and where you'd put it along that continuum. Okay, yeah. The next continuum, did you see it as a one-off situation? So on the one hand, did you see the situation as specific to that particular set of facts? It was a one-off. Or did you see it as something more pervasive? So a one-off, it was about that situation. A pervasive might be something, I always stuff this up. It affects much more than that particular set of events. And just see where you'd put that on that line. And then on a third continuum, consider whether at one end you perceive the causes of this setback to be external or outside of your control, or whether you saw it as all up to you, all within your personal control. So personal control was all my fault. External control, I was giving a presentation, the equipment didn't work, we had the wrong venue, blah, blah, those kind of things. Okay, Martin Seligman, who's known as the father of positive psychology, considers that our level of optimism or pessimism depends on our reality through the lens of the 3 Ps: permanent, pervasive, personal control. So, an optimist who has a bad experience thinks, well, this will pass. It's very temporary. It's only a small part of my life. This is not like me. It had little to do with me. So say an optimist had, before they came here today, an argument with their teenage daughter. The teenage daughter said she hated you, you yelled back, you're feeling bad. So the optimist would say, well, things will be different by the time I get home this evening. It'll pass. We've got a good relationship. This is generally things go well between me and my daughter. This is a one-off event. And, she had a really busy weekend. She had lots on. She was involved in that choir practice. She had sports in the morning. She's really tired, and that's why that happened. And I reacted to it because I had to get away to this conference today. So the optimist would think of things in that way. Whereas the pessimist would say, I have screwed up with my daughter. I yelled at her this morning. She's just not going to trust me. She's not going to talk to me about things. She hates me. I am such a bad mother. This is going to impact our relationship. So that's the extreme ends of both of those continuums. So optimists and pessimists look at both good and bad experiences differently. If we're more pessimistic, we tend to think of a good experience as maybe I got lucky. The person on the other side, in that case, they had the flu that day. They were feeling really bad. That really helped my chances. They turn things around in that way. Martin Seligman, from his research, said men are more optimistic about work, attributing failure to temporary, local and external causes. And they are more pessimistic about interpersonal failures, invoking permanent, pervasive and personal causes. Women are just the reverse. They are optimistic about social setbacks, but pessimistic about achievement. Don't know what you think about that, but they found, he said that although average levels of optimism between men and women seem to be from research the same, it reveals that gender differences are about what we might be optimistic or pessimistic about. And this may be one of the reasons, and this does not underestimate things like unconscious bias and systems and structural things, but it may be one reason why men tend to get higher up the career ladder than their female colleagues, because we might tend to view things as more our fault and be more pessimistic in the way we look at our professional setbacks. And if that's the case, we need to challenge ourselves with that. Making sense? Cool. Okay, so how to reframe things positively. I quite like acronyms, so ABCDE is really easy to remember. We have the adversity, the setback or failure. What are our beliefs around them, the 3 Ps? What are the consequences of those beliefs? Dispute those beliefs, and how to energise ourselves. And I'm just going to go through those quickly now. So firstly, challenging what we believe. They say we have between 12,000 and 60,000 thoughts per day. And according to some research, as many as 98% of them are the same as yesterday. Don't know how they work that out, but we're creatures of habit. But more significant in terms of what we're talking about this afternoon is, for many people, around 80% of our thoughts are negative. And that doesn't mean they're real, as we've talked about, but they are negative. So we know due to the negativity bias, we're going to be more alert to those negative experiences. So questioning, is this belief useful? Is it real? So disputing it. This is what you're good at. Be a good lawyer. Talk back to the voices in your head. Re-examine the facts of the situation and challenge the faulty evidence and assumptions. So when those thoughts come out. Ask yourself, what other explanations are there for the way things happened the way they did? Question the assumptions you've made. And again, sometimes you won't know, but give yourself a more helpful story so that you can move forward if you need to. And even if the belief is true, what are the implications? What's the worst case? How can I change that for the future? How can I think about it differently? How useful is it? And action. So depending when you have those beliefs, if you're in the midst of something you have to do, such as give a presentation, you're thinking, oh gosh, I think this might be boring. We have to stop ourselves in that moment and think, how productive is this for me right now to think that? Stop that downward spiral. Some people have an elastic band that they flick whenever a negative thought comes into their head and they catch it. Sometimes we might just stop and give ourselves time to come back to something later because we just need that bit of time. So you've got this email that you've just seen and it's really made you feel quite anxious or angry or upset. So you might just say, I can leave that for now and come back to it later. I'm going to readdress it later and just change your thoughts. Or sometimes if it's a major adversity, we really do need a decent amount of time just to step away, get some distance. So that might be doing something such as going for a run, spending time with the kids, watching a movie. If you've got the time, go away for a weekend. You know, when you get completely away and then you can come back to something feeling more energised. And if you disputed your beliefs successfully from those other things, take action. That's what this is about, whatever action you need to take. Okay. The photographer who took this named it the Bridge of Hope. I think hope's really important. The journey's not over yet, even when we do have a setback. We're not at the end. And hope is a better option than fear. And now we're going to look at ways we can address anxiety, fear and self-doubt and take advantage of opportunities and risks. So I mentioned fear is evolutionary. It's trying to keep us safe. That's why we have it. But it can come across as a really, depending on you, I don't know what you're like, but there's a judging, critical, loud voice sometimes in our head. It's screaming at us about all our inadequacies, all that might go wrong. Who's got one of those voices? A few people have. It might be a voice of someone you know. It might be an ex. It might be, your mother, whatever. But that voice in your head that keeps at you. And one way, we're going to look at a few different ways we can change that voice. But one way is changing the sound of it. Make it sound like Donald Duck. Just loosen it up a bit. Change the sound of the voice and have some fun with it. Don't know what that's there. Here we go. Elizabeth Gilbertson, she's the woman who wrote the Eat, Pray, Love one, and she's just recently written a book on creativity. And Elizabeth talks about putting fear in the back seat of the car. So she says fear is always with her. You know, it's with her in the car. She's going to have it there, but it's going to be in the back seat. It's never going to be allowed to drive. It's never going to be able to pick the map. It can't control the stereo, the music, turn up the volume, down the bottom, volume, choose any of those things. It's just there in the back. And, you know, it's along for the ride, but, you know, it's not going to drive. So just where would you put fear? I was going to have a chair here so I could put fear while I went through this today, but I didn't think I could for the film. So put it aside. Know that it's there. Or you could do a Gandalf. You shall not pass. Keep that fear in their back. Oh, what if it doesn't work out? What if I can't handle it? What if I'm not good enough? What if they don't like me? What if I lose? Again, talking back to those fears with gentleness, kindness, compassion. Check out what might be the worst that can happen and know that you've got your own back. If you've done your own looking at the reality and what might possibly go wrong, what can you do about it? Tell my fears. Tell them I've got my back. And we know that we can replace those kind of what-if fears with knowing the ability we have to learn and figure things out. With enough focus, time, effort and dedication, I believe I can learn to do what needs to be done. And some questions to ask yourself and remember is, what have I already done in my life that I didn't know how to do? Or at an even more basic level sometimes, how am I in the moment? Am I actually all right now? Right now we're all right, we're all safe, there's nothing going on. And often there's nothing going on. It's our imagination, it's our dress rehearsal of tragedy. What resources do I have to take action and change the problem? Confidence is a big one for many of us. I know in the groups of women that I've worked with, confidence is an underlying issue for most women. Even though for many, you might not see that on the surface. And I'm not going to spend much time on confidence because I know Brenda, for those of you who did Brenda's workshop this morning, you would have done some body language around confidence, yeah? Yep, good. But confidence is a state we can get ourselves into. But it does affect women. It affects us in terms of taking risks. And we know things like if women apply for a job, the research that says we might want to have 95 to 98% know that we can do that in the job description. Whereas a man, I think, who knows what the stats is for men? Yeah, it's about 60, 65. If they've got that, they'll apply, whereas we're waiting to make sure we've got it all right. There was a study of a test, getting students to do a test, for example. And initially they were asked to answer all the questions that they knew. So the women in this scenario did a lot worse than the men. Because they didn't, but when the same thing was done again, but this time everyone was told to answer every question, women did equally as well. So we tend to doubt ourselves, second guess ourselves. Being dependent on the opinion of others. diminishes our confidence. We need to compare ourselves to ourselves and aim to improve our own life. And you're probably familiar with the confidence-competence cycle. And although the arrows are going one way there about the belief of capability, then action, thoughts, confidence, it could go other way. You could have the thought of confidence and take action, and that changes your belief of what you're capable of. And that confidence could be substituted with courage to do that as well. Okay, I've talked a little bit already about this, but there's a difference between people with a growth or a fixed mindset. People with a fixed mindset tend to believe that they're born with their talents. You know, you've got it, you're good at singing or you're not. Your intelligence is a set point. Effort doesn't really make a difference. Whereas a growth mindset, you might not be able to do it yet, but if you had put in the right amount of effort, had the right mentoring, the right strategies, the right help from people, yeah, I could do it. And successful women tend to put a growth mindset frame around things. So in approaching a challenge, if a fixed mindset would say, let's look back at some of those other things that I did before, are you sure you can do it? You don't have the talent for that. What would a growth mindset say in response to that? How could you reframe that? Any ideas? So I'm not sure I can do it yet, but if I put the time in, or I put the effort in, or I study this, I will be able to do it if I practice this. So turning those things around, what if you fail? Most successful people have failures along the way. Can you think of a successful person who hasn't had a failure? I know that was covered in influence, but you know, everybody faces setbacks. If you don't try, you can protect yourself and keep yourself from being embarrassed or losing your dignity. A growth mindset might be, if I don't try, I will never succeed. And where's the dignity in that? So giving it a go. So the moment you change your perception is the moment you rewrite the chemistry in your body. So who's experienced a little bit of stress and so far this year? Anyone? A lot of stress? Yeah. Okay. Health psychologist Kelly McGonigal has studied stress in depth. And when she used to see it as public enemy number one, she's changed her mind about stress. The new research suggests that stress may be as bad for you as you believe it to be the case. And when we change our mind about stress, our body's response actually changes. So Kelly McGonigal's got this great TED talk, which I think is quite fun, where she talks about an experiment where there's bright lights. They got these people into a laboratory, they put bright lights on them, cameras. They had to talk for 5 minutes to a panel of experts about their personal weaknesses, while those experts fired questions at them or just shrugged. And then once they got that negative verbal feedback, they were also given a maths test where they were harassed through the process. And the maths test was, I want you to count down backwards from 996 in increments of 7. Shall we have a go? 996? Come on, faster, louder. Too slow. Oh, come on. Okay, you got the idea. So they were doing all that in a high-pressured environment, and I would find that incredibly stressful. And they did have the typical stress response, which is that rush of adrenaline, which makes your heart pound, your breath quicken, might break into a sweat. But those who are trained beforehand to see stress as positive, their actual biology showed a different result. They still had those feelings, but rather than the heart showing up like it would when you're in a really negative stress response, it was more like it is when you're experiencing joy and courage. Because similarly, your heart picks up then, doesn't it? It races. Our breath gets quicker. So when people changed the way they viewed stress, their body changed, and I find that really useful. I mean, I used to think you had to go around avoiding stress. You can't. The research says we can't avoid stress. And we're all going to find different situations stressful. But what we can do is look at it, how helpful it is for us. And they're saying that if we reframe our response to stress, our body will change. And it's a kind of like, there's also this thing that happens like inoculation. A little bit of stress, and if we handle it well, it helps us for the future. So reframing that is seeing our body rising to the challenge can make us feel less stressed and actually healthier. I was thinking of the story I heard recently of a child who was having really, really bad nightmares, waking up every night screaming and crying, and his mum didn't know what to do about it. He said he was being chased by this awful monster, couldn't really describe it, but it was happening night after night after night. And then someone suggested to the mum, tell your son to turn around and face it. So the mum talked to her son about doing that, and he didn't do it for a while. And then one night he did try that. He was being chased. He was tripping through the paddock, being chased by this big thing. He couldn't really describe what it was. And he stopped, paused, turned around, looked at it, and it was this huge, grotesque, monstrous thing which just dissolved as he looked at it. And sometimes that's what fear does. Eleanor Roosevelt said, "We gain strength and courage and confidence by each experience in which we really stop to look fear in the face. We must do that which we think we cannot." So being open to opportunity, the way we think about the things we're aiming for, how we frame that, affects our level of ambition, our willingness to take risks, and how we make decisions. If we see things again as problems, failures, or issues to overcome, we may be less motivated to work towards them and stick at them. And that may affect our ability to achieve them. Seeing things as potential opportunities or positive challenges can be powerful. It leads us to what psychologists call the approach motivation. Our sense we're moving towards something is better than avoiding things we don't want. It gives us a greater sense of control, which is vital for happiness. So try asking yourself in these situations, what are the opportunities here that could help me achieve my goals? Well, what's the positive challenge in this for me? How can I build that courage muscle? So developing courage muscle, I think Nikki's talked a bit about courage this morning. So I'll just quickly go through this. Identifying, just again, knowing your emotions, identify them. That's half the thing, is knowing what's going on inside of us and acknowledging it. And it is just a feeling or an emotion. An emotion is energy in motion. It changes, it moves through us. Weigh up the risk. What's the worst thing that can happen? Recognise you have a choice. Talk back to any voices you've got which aren't helpful, kindly and firmly. Imagine the best that could happen. Sometimes when we've got a opportunity, we might not be able to imagine the best that could happen. Well, talk to some people you know and trust. Or imagine someone you admire. How would they respond to that opportunity? And once you've made your choice, take action wholeheartedly with a growth mindset, knowing that you can meet the challenges along the way. What about perfectionism? In a group of highly successful, probably a lot of achievement-focused women here, there's bound to be some of us who have perfectionist tendencies. And Brene Brown says, if we spend our lives waiting until we are perfect or bulletproof before we enter the arena, we ultimately sacrifice relationships and opportunities. We turn our backs on our gifts and the unique contributions we can make. Perfect and bulletproof are seductive, but they just don't exist in human experience. So let's not wait till we can do 98% of that role description. And there's a big difference between having high standards for yourself and being a perfectionist. And we don't have positive emotions such as belonging, creativity and joy without vulnerability. We need to let go of being good enough, let go of being perfect, and move on. Know that we're enough. Done is better than perfect. What's doing even if we might fail? Could be another thing to ask ourselves when facing a challenge. Okay. Just coming back to the negativity bias. Because of the fact that those good experiences don't stick to us, we need to notice and absorb good facts and positive emotions. There's a lot of scientific evidence showing the benefits of being more mindful, and I think Nikki talked about that earlier today, or this afternoon, if you're going to this afternoon's one. More consciously able to notice the world in the present moment, what surrounds us, what we can see, feel, hear, smell, touch. And there's also a strong evidence that a focus on what's good or going well balances out our natural tendency to look for what's wrong. So noticing those good things, noticing the good things that have happened here today for you. You learnt something new, you met someone new and had this really interesting conversation. So ask yourself, what's also true? What's good that's happening right now? I went to a course earlier this year with Dr. Rick Hanson, who teaches positive neuroplasticity. And we learnt how to rewire our brains by taking in the good or beneficial experiences to help build our inner strengths and resources. Resources such as resilience, emotional balance, grit, patience, generosity, mindfulness, feeling good about yourself, cared about, compassion. And learning how to use our mind to encode positive resources into our neural structure is fundamental to our well-being and experience of life. And it's about noticing and absorbing good facts and experiences. So when that bad stuff does come along, you've got more resources to build on. So I was just going to outline how to do that, how to hardwire your brain for positivity, for good experiences, beneficial experiences, and then I'll take you quickly through a exercise in doing that before we finish. So firstly, have a positive experience. So just notice the good facts. There are good facts, even if you can't think of something positive. There's running water, what is the good facts? It might be a compliment from a colleague, dinner with friends, beauty of a flower, laughter. Then enrich that experience, intensify and savour it. We rewire our brain we can build new neural networks in 20 to 30 seconds. That doesn't sound long, and it's not long, although when you do it, it can feel like a long time. But if we stay on that situation for 20 to 30 seconds, it's going to make a difference to our brain. Absorb it. Let it sink in like water into a sponge or hot chocolate into your body when you're feeling cold. So we let that experience absorb. And there's an optional second, last thing that we can do, which is linking the positive to the negative material to soothe or replace it. You can do this by holding the awareness of the positive and a negative emotion together at the same time, making the positive in the foreground. So a feeling of accomplishment and joy, for example, when contemplating something you did well, while feeling apprehensive about a project you might have coming up. You can hold those both together and soothe one. So we've got 2 minutes. We'll do a very quick exercise then in that. We might just go through the first few. So think of a positive experience that you have recently had. Something that maybe happened. Good thing to do in terms of rewiring our brain is something within the last 24 hours, if we can, as you're going on. And I just want you to relax as you think about that experience now. Just take a few deep breaths in and out as you gradually relax into that. And if you'd like to, you're welcome to close your eyes. And I want you to think of something good that's happened. Might be something today, something you're proud of, just something nice. And picture all the colours that are in that picture for you. The sounds. Who else was present, or were you on your own? Really feel that. And let it sink into you. Absorb it. And you might want to amplify it. You might want to turn up the colour, make it brighter and bolder. If you heard something good, maybe turn up the volume on that. If there's something good about you, maybe imagine a whole group of people saying it. And just really enjoy that. And when you're ready, come back to this room, come back to this time. Okay, great. And you can do that with all sorts of things. And rewiring them if doing that on the spot or at the end of your day, or if you do anything like yoga, thinking about those kind of things. Or you can do it by talking to a friend or talking to your partner at the end of the day. Ask them questions, ask your children questions which wire in the good things that have happened, their successes. When you're mentoring somebody, talk to them about that. Make them really ingrain it into their being. Okay, I just want to finish with the story. So the grandmother said to the granddaughter, the same fight is going on inside you and inside all human beings as well. And the granddaughter thought about what her grandmother said And then she cried out deeply, "Which wolf will win, Grandma?" And her wise grandmother said, "The wolf that you feed, that wolf will surely win." So I'd like to invite you to make a habit of taking in the good, taking in the positive facts, reframing the negative things, and practice doing that. And notice the difference that it'll have for your personal life and your professional life. Thank you very much for your time today. And I'll be around at afternoon tea if anyone wants to talk to me then.
Is this working?
Otherwise.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to move to the afternoon workshop sessions. So you actually, so what we're going to do is, if you were in this room this morning, stay here. The presenter will move, and if you were in the other room this morning, go there, and the presenter. So they'll swap around. Okay. So just a reminder: in this room, Brenda is going to do the pointy end of conversation. Sorry.